I would like to ask you a question, and I would like to have a very short answer. The first question I will ask you is, what did you learn from this project? What did you take away? What did you think about the outcomes? So give a short statement about your experiences in the project. Later on I will come back to you with a question about the future of eco-driving. So in this first part we concentrate on the project itself. And afterwards you're free to speculate. But now, for now, tell me what you took away from the project and what your message would be from the project. Oh, we ask Oliver to start, of course.
Okay, I got a short straw here. But I think for me, one big message from the project is how complex eco-driving really is. To drive eco is very, very, very tough. And there's a lot of information that we'll need to assimilate. And I think that's really why the coaching doesn't work, because you can't, with coaching, tell people what's coming up ahead. So you really need to give this a lot of real-time support to the driver. And then with real-time support, the issue is you don't annoy the driver. Because of course, continually giving pop-ups, for example, is really, really irritating. So you have to damp down the advice. By damping down the advice, then you're damping down the possible achievement, because you can't really achieve everything. So I think that needs to cause us to think about how one should really support the driver in their car.
I can say something. Thank you.
Samantha Jimson.
Thank you. I think one of the great things about working on the ecoDriver project was the realisation that actually behavioural scientists and engineers can not only work really well together and learn a lot from each other, but it can actually be quite an enjoyable experience. And whatever sort of psychologists and other behavioural scientists might think, that we have come up with these great ideas about how to present information to the driver, actually implementing it and evaluating it, I think is really key to come up with sort of robust results that we can present and have great trust in. And I think, for me, I think ecoDriver's managed to do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, Rino.
Okay.
Rino Bauer.
Excuse me. What I enjoyed very much is what Oliver more or less was saying, the complexity. Not only from the behavioral point of view, because that's what I'm used to, but also from a technical point of view. And it was nicely illustrated when we had a discussion about coasting, and should it be neutral or in gear? And the answer was, it depends. And that quite often is an answer that we as a behavioral scientist always have when it's talking about behavior, it depends. And it was very nice to hear from a technical corner that was said as well, it depends.
Okay. Johan Rostam?
Yeah, I'm also to continue on the complexity, not only on the complexity of the system, but also modeling this kind of complex system into traffic simulation, and also scaling up this to the European level. That was a complex task, but I really enjoyed doing it. And we also, here again, even though maybe more engineers working together, but engineers and economists from different fields to understand how the modeling is done, how that affects the European level, how that affects cost benefits. I think that's given us very nice insights as well.
Yeah. Dennis Kooijman?
Yeah, I think I can connect with Oliver, and is that what I learned is you can calculate everything until 2 digits behind the comma. And as an engineer, I really wanted just to put a plug in there. Just do this, and then the people next and human factor people just told me that's too much information for a driver. And in the end, I found it really interesting how far you can still come with a proper HMI, but you can still use more information, present more information in other ways. Yeah, and that is, as an engineer, I would really want that plug in.
Thank you. Guillaume Jean-Pierre?
Yeah, it's difficult to be the last, but of course I agree with everything that has been said before. I wanted to say that eco-driving is very complex, and I can say that at the beginning of the project at IFSTAR we chose to develop this eco-driver Android application, and we were thinking that it was possible to compete with the OEM on this. And one of the lessons we learned is that it's quite difficult because we are not professional, we don't have all the information, and I believe the key is the precision of the advice you give to the drivers, and you need to be very precise and very efficient 99% of the time, otherwise it doesn't work. So this is one of the lessons we learned, that it's not so easy.
Okay, thank you very much. Now it's your turn. Do you have questions to the panel, or do you want to give a message to the project? You were the first. Please state your name.
Sorry. Again, Guido Filo from Fiat Chrysler. I would like to put on the table a provocation, let me say, based on what you said. In my view, the next step is the autonomous driving. So, if you are able to say to the vehicle how to drive, and there's no human controlling it, maybe we will achieve what you want. You have the no.
Yes. So Dennis already said you can forget the HMI and plug the VE3 model or the OEM model straight into the vehicle. But I guess there's one big question there, which is whether it's acceptable to the driver to be forced to drive eco then. Because yes, you can have an eco mode, but do people choose the eco mode nowadays? Probably not. Will they choose the eco mode with an automated vehicle? Maybe not. And of course, we already heard from John Nelthorpe about the time issue. If the eco mode costs you 2 minutes on your journey, are you willing to accept it? And I think at the moment, we simply don't know how acceptable that is. And I guess finally, in the end, that's a decision for the authorities and the politicians about whether they tell people building automated vehicles that they're not allowed the crazy mode, which Tesla has, that they have to drive eco. And I know this is actually a big debating point, because even for speed compliance in North America, the OEMs say we need to allow the driver driving automated to exceed the speed limit. Is that acceptable? Is it socially acceptable? And so on. And they're saying, well, in our market, that's what drivers expect.
Johan?
Yeah, just to add on a comment there. In the traffic simulations, we have this green future scenario where, as you saw, more or less everyone in the end were equipped with the system. And also, we assume that the compliance would increase. More or less, in the last year of the green future scenario, it's all are equipped and fully compliant, which is more or less what you said. It's already in there. It's not modeled as a self-driving car, but at least that's more or less this plug going in. So we have also been looking on that kind of situations in the scaling up.
Yeah.
Patrick Jensen from Renault. So you have shown that eco-driving is a very smart solution for CO2 reduction, fuel consumption, emission reduction, safety also benefits. If we need to help car manufacturer to develop this solution, because it's not so easy to develop and to convince that there is an opportunity. And today, you know that there are some CO2 regulations, and especially in Europe, and but today eco-driving solutions are not counted as a solution. So do you think that it could be possible to have evaluation procedures in order to get benefits about this smart solution?
Well,
No.
willing to answer it.
No.
You started.
Okay, you start, but you give.
Yes, of course you could do that. I mean, we've seen how Euro NCAP promotes safety systems. It's a very effective mechanism. If not now, Euro NCAP moving into new areas for safety, which is crash avoidance instead of just crash protection, new technologies. I don't see any reason why ecoDriver systems why there couldn't be an assessment regime for ecoDriver systems, and you could get a score for it, just like you do when you buy a washing machine. We already get scores for that. So I don't think there's a problem there. I mean, yes, we'd have to devise a test regime. I'm sure it's doable, and I'm sure it would promote good systems.
If I can add a comment. The question is how it's the key performance indicator to evaluate an eco-driving system. If it's the average fuel consumption, that's a problem because very few people have access to that data, actually. And it's a problem that the privacy issue for the army. We have seen the Volkswagen scandal, and so this is really how can you evaluate an eco-driver system. And the key is the fuel consumption. And who have access to that? The difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe Dennis, you have one of your team.
If they're there.
Because we would like to hear from one of the car manufacturers in the project.
Roland. It's not there anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I know that at the EU level there is innovation applications that are recognized for OEM to count into the reduction to the gram per kilometer, right? Because they have to achieve certain goal with the engine and to achieve the goal of the Commission by 2023 or 2020, okay, 2020. And then I know that there are already some systems that have been accepted as innovation application to contribute to this for 1 gram or for 2 gram, or I mean, these are also already there and they are accepted by the Commission as such, and so the OEM can count them as contributing to that. So the question here is how eco-driving could be also recognized as such an application, an innovation application in that context. Right? And then we go back to the way how you assess that, how you measure it, how you, and then, and I think it's not for eco-driving only, it's for all ITS applications that can contribute to this, right, to this reduction. So it's a question of a methodology, we have a methodology to make sure that we measure this in a certain way, we test it in a way that we can prove that these number of grams are achieved. And we have projects in Europe with assessment methodology like ACT emission, like Amitran, where they have proposed such approach, and I think this is maybe the direction to go in order to then try to assess the system again against, I would say, a methodology, with a methodology.
Now we're also talking at the eco-drive system as a separate system. And maybe a bit ahead of the discussion, we now know that real-world performance, real-world driving behavior can influence NOx emissions very heavily compared to regular legislation. So at a certain point in time, I expect that eco-driver systems are more integrated into the whole powertrain control, such that it can actually help achieving the future emission legislation, and with that it will also include all the testing and evaluation of the whole complete system.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a next question over there.
I have a question about the target you originally set for this project was about 20% of CO2 emission reduction. Now I saw in the first day it was more towards 5-6%. Do you think that 20% is still achievable in the future, or what kind of future direction do you see for eco-driving towards the 20%?
Oh, you're going ahead for my second question. But maybe you can say something about that percentage. I'm sorry.
With respect to the percentage, I think that really, when I studied it, there was a term that we called room for improvement. So how much can someone improve? So someone who is already aware of how to drive more eco-friendly, more green, has less room for improvement than someone who accelerates very fast, decelerates very late, and drives a very high speed. That person has a very high, much room for improvement. So if you are talking about that 20%, it will depend upon people you are targeting. If you have seen the poster of TNO with the different driver segments, there are people, again, who are aware of green driving and doing it, people who are willing to do it but don't know how, and who are simply not willing. Well, those who are not willing, you probably will not get that far. They have to wait to have an automated vehicle who does it for them. But people who are willing but don't know how to do it, those you should target, because there's enough room for improvement and people who are willing. And whether that is a margin of 5, 10 or 20%, that depends on how they exactly drive. But honestly, I think an average over a large population of 20%, I don't think that's achievable.
Oliver?
Well, I think one of the things we maybe didn't tell you in enough detail in terms of the design of the system is that for motorway cruising, we acted more like a speed alert system than an eco-driving system. That was a collective decision. You can save a very large amount of energy, initially by getting everybody to comply with the speed limit on a motorway, which they currently don't. But you can also save even more energy if they drive below the speed limit. And we haven't done that in this project. We could have done that, but we doubted it would be very acceptable. We haven't tested it, so we don't know. That's only our intuition. But clearly there is a margin there to be gained. If you tell people to drive at 90 kilometers an hour instead of 110, you can actually have quite a large saving. I wouldn't be able to quantify it, but I think Johan would be able to quantify it at in about 5 minutes. Or Isabel.
Yeah, or at least give us some time with the computer.
Yeah.
Some simulations will be very good,
yeah,
of course.
Indeed.
30% reduction between the 20
yeah. Okay, so that's a lot.
Yeah, Guillaume?
To add a comment, I used to say that the best eco-driving is walking or cycling. If we want to reach 20, somebody used to say that at least once. No, that means if we want to reach 20% reduction, we need to figure out that we never reach that by just pressing a button or using a system, or we need to change our behavior. And in that sense, eco-driving is a way to make drivers realize that they need to change their behavior and not using just the eco button that you can see on some cars now. So we need to not to trust too much into technology. We also need to change. And if we do all of these things together, we may reach that 20%. But not only with a simple button and a big computer.
So maybe to be a little bit off topic, but I think what you said on cycling and walking is really interesting, because this project did not only focus on how to reduce CO2 emissions by giving eco-driving advice, but actually reduce the CO2 contribution from the project, because there's been lots of public transport traveling. There has been bike hiring to get to the facilities, and lots of walking. So not only this taking the airplane and then the taxi. So I think that's we contributed to the.
Thank you. Is there another question to the project?
sure if I understand you correct. In the beginning you said ecoDriver is very complex, which is sure, but you said, if I understand correct, that coaching is not helpful to solve this issue.
No, I didn't say
Oh,
that.
okay, so
I wasn't saying that coaching wasn't helpful. I was saying that coaching wasn't enough.
okay.
Just add a piece of work. Some piece of work we've been doing at Leeds as well, looking at how to a really sort of cheap way of encouraging drivers to eco-drive, so not having any of the fancy systems that we've spoken about over the last 2 days, is just to tell them to eco-drive. Can it be that easy that I just say, Rena, get in your car and eco-drive? Does that induce any changes? And yes, you can get some changes in behaviour. They don't last particularly long, and I think that's the thing about the systems, is that it is a reminder, because some of the work we've done actually shows that drivers know how to eco-drive, so they know the basic concepts, they have the knowledge, and some of them have the skills, but not all of them have the skills, and they certainly don't have the ability to activate the skills. And sometimes if you hide messages about eco-driving within a safety message, which I think drivers are a little bit more open to, and they can see the personal impact it would have on them to drive in a more safe manner. If you can hide those eco-driving messages within a safety message, and the two have sort of similar effects, so reducing the speed, less acceleration, maybe that's more of an acceptable way to get eco-driving into people's mental models, as it were.
Oh dear. Can we get a microphone at the back?
Patrick Will from FEV. We know today from human behavioral psychologies and from professional coaches that, let's say, teaching and coaching activities or even human manipulation is a very individualized technique. And I heard before that there wasn't too much individualization going on in the project. So my question would be, if you would go for the next step and look into individualization, what would be your basic approach there? What would you individualize?
Seems to be no.
Well, the reason first why we didn't look further is so we developed more or less in the how to advise part of the project. We developed different driver segments, so to speak. So we had 4 different versions. We tried to develop an HMI for that, and at the same time we developed an algorithm to automatically detect the type of driver we were having. And they were encouraging results, let's put it that way, but not good enough to take further within the project. So we had to stop it. Somewhere we have to make a decision. We would take this forward into a system and test in real-world trials, but it was not stable enough to do it like that. It was not clear enough whether we would get the benefits, so there is where we stopped. However, at the same time, we did continue the driver segmentation part. So you have to find a level between, because we cannot have, well, let's say we have 100 people here, we cannot have 100 different systems. That's impossible. But you can't be at a big level, at an average level. So you have to find something in between in which you have enough different types of people, including an HMI, including how the system works. So if we would go on from here, I would first go on with the results that we had from the questionnaire. So we have people who don't care at all. Whatever you do, you don't get them. And you have people who are willing, but don't know. So you could help them. And then you have to check how you should help them. And quite often what we do is divide the groups in people in for example, age categories. And then we assume that all the old people is a homogeneous group, which is quite ridiculous, obviously, because people of 70, the age of 70, can still drive very differently from another one of 70, and even that's also in our age group, so to speak. So you can't talk about age groups in terms like that. I would try to talk about skills. So what is a person able to do? And that can be the same across ages, it can be the same across sexes, or whatever you want to call, what kind of division you want to make. But if you look at someone's skills and help them there, then you could find, I think, enough level that you can support them. So I would go to an individualized system based on the skill of someone and support people in that system, or in that skill. And it could be with a slow acceleration, slow deceleration, things like that. So I would go on from there.
Guillaume, also.
Yes, and just
as an answer.
wanted to enlarge the question is, do we really want individualization? Do we really want the OEM or the insurance company that you are a risky driver? Because if the insurance company knows that, maybe the police knows that, you know, that what's happening now. So it's a risky track to go on these individualization aspects, because everybody is interested about you are performing what you are doing, and it could be good, but it also could be very negative, especially. And we have some large protections, legal protections on this, because only the police is able to give you a fine if you are too risky. So there is a compromise to do here.
But those data are not disclosed. I mean, if you have an ecoDriver system that adapts to your behavior somehow and try to bring you to the optimal, this is still a relationship you have with your ecoDriver system. It doesn't go outside of the data. There is no privacy.
The data is always going outside. No one. You know that.
No.
Okay,
Can I respond?
very short.
Very good. Again, what I've tried to say with, if we talk about individualization, I don't mean a single person. I don't mean that with individualization. I mean, if you have a one-based system, it's not good enough. A couple of million different systems is not good enough either. You have to find something in between, and there you have to find a common ground. And I think targeting skills of people, of drivers, is the common ground.
Okay, thank you. I would like to go to my second question, and that's the future. And you all have probably an idea what the future of eco-driving will be. No, you.
No? Okay.
No,
Sure.
you were just. Who wants to start?
Yeah.
No, Johan starts.
I think we're already into some, maybe not automation, but at least what we see already now is that you get these kind of cruise controllers doing some of the eco-driving for you. So helping, not only giving advice, but also trying to make this help out, at least from the longitudinal point of view. And of course, automation in the end, then you could maybe also set the automated vehicle to be cruising. But at least we already see now fuel minimizing cruise controls on the market. So.
Yep.
I think it's really important to take note of what the younger generation are doing. So there are new drivers. They use technology very differently. They're much more open to technology, and I think we need to be really careful as maybe an older set of researchers to take care that we do actually look at the sort of how technology is being used by the younger generation, and not only because they're the ones that possibly drive the fastest and have the less skills, but they might be the most open to using new technology in the way that maybe we don't think of currently.
Anyone in the audience below 20? No, I don't.
Reno isn't either. Reno's not below 20.
Clearly the installation for future eco-driving is related with automated driving. There's no other way. I think one of the nicer things that we showed as well, and what Samantha already indicated as well, is that there is a clear relation between eco-driving and safety. So that's, I think that's a real benefit. Only thing, so the discussion about future eco-driving system is related to the discussion about automated driving.
Yeah. No, Guillaume, because he complained he was the last time.
No, I was just thinking about, I'm a statistician, so I'm thinking about data. We are entering a world of big data, and I believe we can really improve the feedback based on this common knowledge we all participating to create. And for example, on a single route, you can maybe compete with some people you don't know you can have a score on this specific route. You can compare with others, and it's going more on this gamification issue, like that young people like, I think. So this could be one of the ways to improve the system.
Dennis?
Yeah, next to automation, which makes me really happy, I think also there will be more integration. You have more and more technical systems supporting the vehicles, so basically property or systems, hybrid vehicles we're all familiar with nowadays. And with a deeper understanding of all the subsystems, you can exploit the whole system better by instructing the driver, okay, now you're allowed to accelerate because it can be helpful sometimes, and now you don't. And with that, you can actually exploit the system way better.
Oliver?
Well, I'd like to say something positive and then maybe express a few concerns. So the positive is, well, I don't think we should be despondent that we've only achieved 5 to 10% or something of carbon, because that's already a huge amount. I mean, carbon savings are going to be incremental. We're not going to get there 100% with some magic technology overnight. And I think the nice thing about our technologies is they can be rolled out now. We can deliver those carbon savings immediately. Even with the app, we can deliver a lot if you add it up into millions of litres or tons of fuel. So we shouldn't go around, you know, crying and saying, well, we haven't achieved our overall goal, because we've actually shown that quite relatively simple technologies can achieve a lot. And the cost benefit is good, so that's the positive side. But I still wonder out there, I think what I want to hear is that the car manufacturers, the vehicle manufacturers are going to be implementing these systems. We've heard it now from BMW a bit. They haven't heard it absolutely clearly from the other OEMs in the project, so I guess that's one message we want to hear back. The OEMs are going to put it out there. But the other one is, as a society, we've got to do something about it. If we have to promote it, let's promote it. Put a score what your fuel consumption is for the vehicle basic, and put a fuel consumption with an ecoDriver support system. People will know right away. That should be part of the label you get when you buy the car. I think that will be an immediate encouragement to these kinds of technologies. I think there's quite a lot we can do now. It's got to be up to the people out there, the politicians as well, the stakeholders who set us these big carbon goals to achieve, to give a little bit of assistance here, start pushing us down the hill towards achieving those goals.
Okay, thank you. The ecoDriver team has given you so much over the last, yesterday and today, so it's time to give something back. So, not so much about questions, but tell the team what you think of the future. What your ideas are, what your concerns are. So, someone must have an idea about the future.
You have developed a co-driving system, and we can consider maybe that the co-driving system are eco-ADAS. So today there is a classification of ADAS, and the final goal is autonomous driving. Autonomous driving. Okay. Do you think that it could be possible to classify a co-driving function? For example, we have eco-scoring or eco-driving assistance or what else? So, do you have something that could help also to develop and to try to have a roadmap, and also due to the fact that we know that the technology won't be the same for eco-driving if we have a normal car, ICE car, but also, of course, we know that electrification is today a new solution for EVs and hybrids. So
we would also like to hear how you see that.
okay, I see that it's one of the smarter solutions to reduce CO2 emission, and it's very competitive. So it's why it's important to develop it, but to develop it, it is important to have a clear benefit as a car manufacturer. Because we have to convince bosses to spend money on this.
Exactly.
And it's, so that means we need CO2 credits.
I first go to the audience.
I think you are aware of the fact that in the Fiat Chrysler we have a lot of cars equipped with ecoDrive. I think we were the first in 2009 to have an ecoDrive system. Maybe it is not well known because in the beginning it's only for some part of our production, but today we are mainly all Fiat branded car equipped with this ecoDrive. Is not as sophisticated as the one that you showed in the project, but of course we are willing to make new generations of this. And we would like also to extend to Jeeps. You know, Jeeps are not so good for CO2.
You said that.
It's true. But I rely on what Patrick did. My problem is to convince our management to give us funds to develop these things. And if I had the opportunity to say to them, there's an eco-innovation able to provide us 2 grams. This will be an immense help for us because 2 grams multiplied by 95 euros per gram, it means 200 euros. I don't think this ecoDrive costs 200 euros to us. It costs much less. So really, this is a very important part. We need a support from the stakeholders, just like Professor Carsten said. And this is my main hurdle in this moment, to convince my management to give us funds to implement more sophisticated devices helping ecoDrive.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that ecoDriver could be considered as an innovation in future. The problem that I see now is that there is not a methodology to evaluate ecoDriver and to evaluate the different function of the ecoDriver. And so I was hoping coming here to see a little bit a clear vision on that, but at this moment it don't look.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm allowed to say something.
A clear vision?
I don't know. Because this is probably, I think, third or fourth question that deals with the methodology to evaluate such a system. I know that within Euro NCAP currently there's discussions about evaluating ADAS. And basically it's too difficult. That's the honest truth. I mean, you can test whether the system works technically. That's fine. You can test that. You could find something to test that as well. But now you have to deal with a driver as well. So you enter behavior, and that's where it's getting murky. It's getting very difficult because you're driving different than I am and than others. So to come up with a test regime that's possible, to come up with a test regime that produces the same result if you repeat it exactly, that's going to be very difficult. And it's even difficult if we have, let's say, a group of 1,000 drivers over the world who do those tests, because they still will react and drive differently each other day. So come up with a result, a test regime that is repeatable, coming up with the same result. I don't think we will have that for an ecoDriver system.
Oliver?
Well, I'll beg to differ from Reno because I think we have an evaluation method. The kind of evaluation method we used in the project could be used to assess a system. You give naive drivers the technology, you pick them according to certain criteria, etc., etc. You give them some test routes to drive. Even if those test routes are a little bit different, as long as each time you test, you use the same test routes, you've got a fairly robust method. It's not perfect, but it will show what you do with the system. So you could apply, I think, I could go in there to a board that wanted advice on how to create a test regime that took into account driver compliance, not just purely the technology and say, well, you can do it based on the methods we've used in our project. And if you read our evaluation report, we've got the beginning of a test regime. So I don't see a problem with that. It's not cheap, I agree. It's not just something you can go into a lab, turn around 3 times and get an answer. It's not like testing a petrol tank for resistance to rupture, but it can be done.
Guillaume?
Different steps, sorry. And if we succeed to follow different steps starting from qualitative up to strict quantitative methodologies, we are more sure to arrive to having cars in demonstrators, better interfaces, better interaction, because in the previous qualitative and lab phase and simulator phase, we can choose what the better solutions are, and then on the field tests that are the field in which it's more expensive to test things, obviously, and much longer and less, we have less control on this. But I think that we prove with our amount of tests, large amount of tests, that even if ecoDriver is dealing with diversity, using a proper methodologies, with a correct way of using all the instruments we have, and we derive from cognitive psychologies and whatever, we can absolutely, and we already have, we deliver in the project methodologies that don't pick the singular results, but we don't want to have singular results. We have a methodology capable to measure averages and of different kind of drivers in different countries. But we suggest to follow and to use all the instruments we have in our science. So this is very important, and very important is the teamwork with engineers, with marketing people. So as much as we succeed in working as a team inside the company and as a European level, and as much as we realize on what we have, and we build new questionnaires, new instruments, we already have a great base on evaluate this kind of systems.
Yes.
Short reaction.
No?
Yes. Well, we are talking several times about evaluation. So, as you may have understood already, this is my job, and has been 9 years I'm working with data from vehicles. So to evaluate something, we need to be fair. To be fair means we need to be independent sometimes, or we need sounded methodology, validated methodology. As you may remember, yesterday I was explaining that we use complex statistical models that may produce sometimes not very nice results, because if you take into account that variability, you are losing some significance sometimes, but this is fair and this is robust. And I believe many times it's not the case. And also I would like to say that the key to evaluation is the data. That means we need to have independent people who have access, who know the methodology and have access to the data. This is really a problem now. And in order the people to follow the results of that evaluation, they need to trust it. And that's also a very important point. And if you want the people to trust that, we need to be fair and we need to be correct with them. And I think it's not always the case, at least as a citizen, I not trust so much the OEM now, and we have seen the issue of that. I mean, we need to advance on this. We need to share data. We need to share methodology, and everyone wants to keep its own data, its own methodology, which is secret and so on. And this is really a problem. And if we don't go beyond that, we won't succeed in evaluation.
Thank you.
Yes. A lot has been said also about automated driving. When you look to the next 5 to 10 years, my opinion is that automated driving will be focused on truck driving, truck platooning, and mainly on motorways, where there is a fuel saving possibility. When I look to eco-driving, roughly, I can say that the main fuel saving is on rural roads. So I would suggest that eco-driving and automated driving can be complementary the next 5 to 10 years, because they have a different reach. Eco-driving more on rural roads, automated driving more on motorways. What's your opinion about that?
I think you have a point there. Also that we saw that the best business case is within fleet owners and maybe also heavy vehicles and buses, and there, as I think it was discussion today, that the owner is different than the driver, and the owner pays the fuel bill. So in one way of actually forcing the driver is by automation, or as we see already, cruise controllers. So, but for the car drivers, we didn't, as Oliver read to, try to push them down to much below the speed limit on motorways. So yeah, pushing them down to speed limit on below the speed limit, pushing down to the speed limit, it's nice, that will help. But for the rural roads where you often have speed limit changes on, if you can get each driver to smoothly adapt with the speed limit changes, local speed limit changes for intersection, for example, you can gain quite a lot, and that will, I think we have shown here that this could help in that case, if you follow it correctly.
Just a small remark, but in designing the road themselves and the motorway themselves, we can save a lot of fuel just by the design, and usually it's not taken into account because they want to lower the money needed to build that road, so they don't. They go up to the mountain and go down instead of having a tunnel or something. But if you have a tunnel, it may cost a lot, but after 50 years, you save a lot of fuel. So this is another way to think about saving fuel for motorways.
Yeah. Paul?
I just wanted to say more or less the same. We were talking about that we
Stand up.
we keep the driver into the loop, we keep the powertrain into the loop, the car design, aerodynamics, and these kind of things. But I think that we forgot sometimes another actor that is important in eco-driving, that is the road profile. We've seen that in rural roads we managed to save more fuel or emissions because something is more required from the driver's point of view. In a motorway, probably the profile is already improved, but not in rural roads. So we should take into account all the actors in the driving to get a more improvement in eco-driving.
Thank you.
Can I have a?
Yeah.
Another thing on the rural roads is also interesting that it seems that you don't need as high penetration rates of equipped vehicles because the limited overtaking possibility. So if you get people, the eco-driver equipped people, drivers to decrease their speed, they become platoon leaders. And if for some flows the limited overtaking possibility, also lower the speeds of the following vehicles. So you can have some extra benefits. Of course, it could be that if it's good overtaking possibility, you have more overtakings, which is contra-effective. But yeah.
Okay, we have a few minutes left. Urgent questions, remarks about eco-driving? Then the panel. Last remarks?
Yeah, it's like an option.
Yeah.
I was thinking about your remark about selling it to the management. Well, we have the same problem sometimes. He's writing it. So the nice thing about the outcome of this one is not only you save fuel, but you have a safety benefit.
Yeah.
So that would be a good selling point within the company, I would say. If you decelerate differently, if you have less speed differences and whatever, lower the speed, you have also safety benefits. I think that would be a nice selling point.
I completely agree, but the problem we want to see money.
Money.
How you recover the costs of development of these new features? I have to do a business case.
But we have it for you. We'll deliver. We'll come there. You have a very nice business case. John already showed you that it's a nice business case for the producers. Yeah.
Well, yes, Sam mentioned children, young people. So, I mean, I really think we have to work on the market as well. That's the one place we haven't talked about at all. So the general public really needs to be informed. We need general behavioural change. People have to be eco. You know, I have a hard time convincing my children to turn the light switch off. They just don't see the point. They don't pay the bill. People have to learn eco behaviours. Walking, cycling's been mentioned, but everything we do in our lives, where we set the thermostat, every time we do something, we're making an eco decision all the time. Take the lift or walk up and down the stairs, etc., etc.
So I think we have to apologize about the temperature and the thermostat. We did not manage to get the temperature down, so sorry. Last remarks from...
Question from Orina.
Just the last thing, I think the only way to have a business case is really to go with this eco-credit and eco-innovation.
Yeah.
For an OEM, this is the way they can monetize this, right?
Right.
So when you look at this point, then the question goes down to how do you prove that you achieve 1 gram, 2 gram, 5 gram, whatever, 0.5 gram. So the question goes down again to how do you measure that and how do you validate it, right? It's not to say that we can do it, we have shown we have a methodology. It's why you really effectively propose a open wide a method to do this. And this is, again, not only valid for eco-driving, but also for all, let's say, eco-ITS applications you may think.
Okay.
Just a last remark about this. I agree, and it's more or less what I wanted to say. In order to convince people, you need strong evidence. And to get strong evidence, you need strong results, so you need a lot of data. And that's why evaluating things only on one single route or in a hangar or something, it's not something very robust, because when you go to reality, things are changing. So that's why I really believe the future of evaluation of all of this we are talking is data coming for a large amount of vehicles, the naturalistic driving studies, a large amount of data shared across Europe, across OEM, and shared with also with the users.
So if I may, you are looking at
I'm going to stop you because they'll be between Oliver and the lunch. So, last remarks from the panel?
Well, I would like to say one thing, and I think probably Yvonne is going to ask for a round of applause from the ecoDriver team any minute. But Yvonne, you've probably expended quite a lot of energy over the last couple of days, but I think you've done it very efficiently. So from us, before there's a round of applause, I'd like to thank you for your professional and timely moderating.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much. You were a lovely team and very easy to moderate. And thank you, the audience, because you are a lovely audience and very active. We, first like to thank the panel for reacting to sometimes quite difficult questions and for their ideas. So let's thank the panel.